Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to today's AP Automation Virtual Summit. My name's Sally Fletcher, Head of SSON Digital, and I'm delighted to be hosting this session today. So before the break, we had a case study from Dom Trainer, who is the Executive Vice President of Shared Services at Limbach. He was talking about all of his AI and AP automation. We're now zooming in on debunking 3 myths about AP automation. And I was particularly kind of keen to cover this topic because we hear, especially me doing all these conferences, we hear a lot about the benefits and how easy AP automation is and what you can do with it. But really what today I wanted to do is look behind that. Let's dissect the truth and the myth about AP automation. Let's see what the reality is, what the crunch points are, the problems that you might face, and how we can overcome that. So we invited Zach Lowe, who's a Senior VP for Commercial at Rossum, to speak to us today. So before I hand over to Zach, a few notices on the console that you see before you. You can earn certifications for this session. If you are collecting your CPE points, you must be based in North America, watch the sessions live, vote in at least 2 polls, watch at least 28 minutes of the session. And once you meet those requirements, you can download your certificate. So please go ahead and do that if that's something that you're after. If you have any technical problems during the session, then the answer will likely be in that question mark, but you can also message me and my colleague Alex in the attendee chat, and we will come right back to you. You guys are already making great use of the emojis, so don't need to explain that one, but you can always give our speaker a thumbs up if you agree with his presentation. And there's also the speaker bio and LinkedIn, which is available in the Head and Shoulders icon towards the bottom. Here you can find out a little bit more about our speaker, connect with him on LinkedIn as well. And finally, our resource center. So the resource center has additional resources related to the topic of the presentation. In here, Rossum have kindly put a copy of the slides, so you don't need to worry about taking notes or screenshots. It's there for you. And a link to their report on document automation trends for 2025, which is really interesting piece and really will keep you up to date there. So I'm going to put you guys to work before I hand over to Zach. And we really want to know what percentage of your AP process is automated. I would love to see if anyone's 100%. Please do come and speak next year at the event. But more likely, we're going to get some 75 to 99, 50 to 74. So go ahead and put the answer that most resonates with you. I can't see if you're telling the truth or lying, but please do go for it. I'm going to introduce Zach while you guys do that. So Zach's spoken for us before and gave a great presentation at the last event. He's a Senior VP for Commercial at Rossum and an AI-first cloud-native intelligent document processing platform. Zach's experience spans over 12 years of working across a variety of sectors in the SaaS space, after most recently having worked at SAP through an acquisition of his former company and the Hut Group, a UK-listed technology organization. He's currently based in the US, flying all over the place, pitching the great word of AI and AP automation. So let's have a look at the results, Zach, and then we'll hand over to you to debunk some AP automation myths. So, okay, brilliant. So yeah, right in the middle ground, 36% saying that 50 to 74% of their AP process is automated. Does that kind of resonate with what you hear, Zach, with your customers?
I think so. It certainly means that I'm speaking to the right crowd. It would have been a more difficult conversation if everybody here was completely automated already. But hopefully, yes, what I can do today is spend some time with everybody and give them some food for thought when they start thinking about moving up from 25 to 50 to 75 and so on and so forth from today.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, so Zach is here live. So yeah, please do get your questions in. We've got some time reserved at the end of the session for Q&A. So please don't be backwards about coming forwards. Over to you, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sally. And thank you everybody for joining. Lovely to see all of you guys virtually. Lovely to be here again. It's, as Sally mentioned, it's my second time doing this setup today. We mentioned I'm going to be talking about busting myths for greater efficiency. When I was thinking about what I wanted to present today, I had a quick look at the attendees, I had a quick look at the agenda, and Rossum we're an AI business, right? And then I had a look at the agenda and I was like, wow, if I talk about AI, I'm just going to be another person talking around how AI in AP automation does all of these different things, and I don't want to just be another tick on the box. The reason why I wanted to talk to you about this today is because I really wanted, as people are on this AP automation journey, I wanted to give people some actionable food for thought that will enable you to have the right level of conversations internally and think about things from hopefully a bit of a unique way, and from the perspective that I have to work with our customers and our prospective customers in a little bit more detail as we continue to move forward. So that's going to be the real focus for me today. Sally, very kindly, has already done the sort of question, the first bit of the poll. The next question I wanted to ask is, how are you measuring automation at your company today? So I don't expect it to be a complete and utter piece from here. I think we'll give people maybe 20, 30, 40 seconds. You can, of course, continue to answer that through the Q&A as you continue to move forward. But I just want people to think about, how are they measuring AP automation in their company today? And I'm sure people will be giving some answers, and we can look to review those answers at the end. But I'll just give people 5 or so seconds to just maybe put an answer in there. The reason I asked that question is because actually, as we deal with customers here at Rossum, the reality is many people will review and measure AP automation in a variety of different metrics. And what I'm hoping to do today is to enable people to think about the metrics that perhaps they're using, perhaps they're not using, but also to start to think about actually, how do we go about maybe rethinking some of these journeys that we're on. So the first piece of advice I always have for people when they're thinking about AP automation is that things are not always as simple as they seem. So what I mean by that is, faster doesn't always mean better. Accuracy doesn't always mean perfection. Automation doesn't always mean time savings. And actually, human effort is not always a bad thing. I'm sure for many of you today, you're probably going, okay, I understand that. Maybe I get that piece. Maybe I get that piece. And of course, we can spend some time talking through this today. But what I want to do is I want to get into my first myth for today. Myth number 1, accuracy or data accuracy is everything. I'm sure we've all spoken about this. When I think about the customers and the people that come through to Rossum, some of the first questions that we have here at Rossum are, how accurate are you? What's your out-of-the-box accuracy? What do you focus on? How do you make sure that you are 99% accurate? How do you make sure that you're 100% accurate? All of those different things. But actually, when I think about accuracy, and the question that I think of is, when accuracy becomes the only focus in an AP automation project, it can actually slow down growth and certainly can slow down efficiency. For me, when I think about businesses that focus solely on accuracy, it actually stops those AP teams being able to deliver value because they're so focused on one metric as opposed to the rest of them. And the big thing I always say, and I always ask, is, how do you think of accuracy? Are you thinking of accuracy as reliability? Because if you are, then there's really a different topic of conversation that we need to be having, right? Thinking of them as one or the other really enables the organization, or really exposes organizations to more risk than they should do. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through just a very quick story about how we've done that. I've actually anonymized a case study. So I've used Nimbus Ltd. I believe my marketing exec today is a big Harry Potter fan, so that's probably where you'll get Nimbus from today. But this is actually a customer that's been working with us for a little while. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory about why they came to us and their journey when they focused just on getting the highest possible accuracy rate. So they're a logistics business. They focused on invoice processing. And their key thing was they wanted to invest in a new tool that gave them as high accuracy as possible. And of course, when you think about that, the short-term results are pretty damn amazing, right? They were getting amazing extraction results. They were also really focused on getting the details correct. They were focused on getting the vendor names, they were getting the invoice amounts, they were getting dates, they were getting some line item information. And of course they thought, well, we've done exactly the right thing here. We've focused on accuracy. We're pulling all the information off. This is working incredibly well for us. The other thing that they were really pleased about when it came to the results that they were having through using their previous technology is they were giving the things that they wanted to do. They were reducing manual data entry from the AP team specifically. And of course, they are lowering human error. For many of the people today, for many people that are on the call today, most of us will be thinking, well, Zach, of course, that sounds like a real success. And of course, they heralded it as a success. But what we see as success short-term doesn't always match to success long-term. And that's then really what I want to talk to us about today, and how I believe that we can start to debunk the myth around accuracy. Because when we think short-term, of course, we're extracting the data, but long-term, extracting data is one area, but then how do we use that data into our systems downstream? It's all well and good extracting data, but what about matching that data against 2- and 3-way matching against things like supplier information, PO information? Okay, one thing that we certainly saw, and one of the reasons they came to us, was that they were incorrectly paying suppliers. They were identifying duplicate invoices that they'd accidentally paid. There were fraudulent invoices that they were paying because there was no checking that was going on within the systems. They were also missing valuable opportunities to save money. When we think about extracting, of course, we can extract that data, but what about adding context to the information that's on those invoices? What about if we're looking at, actually, I can receive an early payment discount on this? What about if I can look at payment terms that should or shouldn't be correct? All of these different pieces outside of accuracy are the things that really lead to improving the technology and the flow that these organizations have. And of course, take the organization, Nimbus, in this instance, they realized they needed a bit of a better system. And that was exactly what Rossum started to focus on. So what did we do and how did we help them? So we talked around that data extraction being a really, really key point. We understand actually that from the documents, there's a huge amount of information that is not actually written on an invoice, a PO, a credit note, that many of the organizations need. What about things like calculating information, things like tax, things like currency, things like total weight? All of that capability can actually be calculated and extracted from the document if we think about it with the right level of information outside of just extracting what's on the page. What we also do is we should be, outside of being accurate, we should be checking that information. We should check against things like banking information, line item information, PO information. That'll stop things like duplicates. One of the really interesting use cases here is actually Nimbus, this company here. They were using a procure-to-pay system. And I'm sure, like many of the organizations here today, you have a procure-to-pay system, and that procure-to-pay system has a supplier portal. That supplier portal often has companies where they are putting in their own payments and their invoices. But actually, as a backup, they also submit those invoices via email. Being able to check them in real time and make sure that we're not duplicating effort and duplicating work, a real key focus for any organization that starts to think about truly impacting AP automation as part of that journey. The next part for me is integration with the ERP, a huge area for us here, right? We have things like payment terms, we have early payment discounts. One of the things that many of our customers are really enjoying around Rossum at the moment, and again, many vendors also do this, is we are able to match, and as part of a working capital initiative for a lot of our organizations, we look at payment terms, we look at payment discounts, and we can run calculations in real time to understand which one gives us the better benefit. Should we use our master data? Should we use the data that's on the page? So really starting to increase capability and setup for the organization to focus on saving money continuously. And then finally from here, we also focused on just really completing that journey. So things like custom rules, approval workflows, automation, exception handling, all of those good things. So what do we learn from myth number one? Accuracy is not the be-all and end-all. So just because it's accurate, it does not mean it's valid. 12% of transactional documents contain discrepancies. Number two, context is key. Automation, AP automation should look just beyond the surface level information that we receive to really identify further important information such as PO information, payment terms. Accuracy could introduce overconfidence. You as a business may be reliant so heavily on accuracy that you forget about the missing opportunities or valuable opportunities that exist within your automation or within your team to look at capturing things like payment incentives or discounts. And actually for me, data needs to be normalized for your systems. A big thing for me at the moment is we always focus on accuracy, but there's no point extracting information if it isn't going to match down to your downstream systems. We all know that PO numbers in your ERP need to be normalized. Maybe you don't want hyphens, maybe you don't want numericals, maybe you don't want alphabeticals. All of that becomes really important just outside of extracting the data. So there's myth number one, hopefully giving everybody a bit of a steer. Let's try and move away from just thinking around accuracy being the most important part of the journey for us today. Now, let's get into myth number two. I love this one, and I'm actually going to talk just a little bit more about this from my experience. The reason why I enjoy this one is because actually, for many people on this call today, it will be a concern for them if they are working as part of an organization that is implementing AP automation. For many CFOs that I deal with, and I actually made this story from a CFO that I've been working with for around 6 months, so I can actually give you that sort of advice. They also just think it's really simple. You introduce AP automation, we reduce headcount. But what I want to do is I want to start by thinking around why this myth exists, right? Give ourselves some context, because I'm sure people worry about this on a continual basis. Number one, why does this myth exist? Cost-cutting expectations. It is simple maths. I want to introduce automation, I want to reduce my team size, and therefore I will cost cut in my AP team. Okay, makes sense. Number two, past automation experience. In manufacturing, in retail, for many of these businesses, they have in the past introduced automation that has enabled them to reduce team size. Certainly if you think on factory floors, if you think around things like in retail, it could be stitching of clothing and all of those different things. Of course, automation immediately leads to reduced team size. And my favorite one, vendor promises, right? I have many CFOs that come to me today and they say, Zach, I need to do X, I need to do Y. Can you do this for me? I don't like being the guy that says yes without really understanding more of the questions that sit behind it. We're going to talk about that today. But fundamentally, I believe this exists because many of the vendors out there say, we will reduce your team size by X. But I don't think what they're really taking into account is this. Automation does not eliminate the work. For me, when I'm thinking about these projects, automation simply changes the work that people are doing today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through another story. Again, we've anonymized the story today, but actually this comes from experience of working with a CFO that we engaged with over a period of time. The CFO came to me. They are a manufacturing business. They wanted to streamline AP roughly 6 or so months ago. They had a team of 10 AP staff processing 144,000 invoices a year, 12,000 invoices a month. And the CFO said, Zach, I really want to reduce my team size today. I said, okay, no problem at all. Let's go on a journey. Let's think about reducing that team size. So his expectations were, right, we're going to get going with AP automation. We're going to reduce my team size. Amazing. Expectation number one. Expectation number two was, I'm going to eliminate the time-consuming tasks within my organization. My team are going to stop doing manual data entry. They're going to have more time on their hands. They're going to have too much time on their hands, and therefore then I can reduce the size of my team. Brilliant, easy, ROI through the roof. This is perfect for this organization. And then number three, he also said, well, with all of this time, I'm going to get my team to focus on more strategic activities. I said, amazing idea. That's exactly what you want to be doing. But as we continued through this journey, we caught up every 4 to 6 weeks. I said, how's it going? Right? And we started to look at what the reality looked like of this journey from cost cutting in AP automation journey. He said, Zach, actually my team size, we're pretty much remaining the same size. I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, how come? And he said, well, my staff are still really busy, but actually when I'm now speaking to them, when I'm thinking about the work they're doing, they're focused on far more value-added tasks than just the tasks that I thought they were doing originally. He also said that our processing capacity has increased by 50%. And something that he noted as a CFO was that the satisfaction that he was getting from his vendors was also starting to increase. So soft output for something that he originally thought was going to be a really clear-cut, hard output for this AP automation journey. I'm sure like many of you today, you're thinking about how this works, what it takes into account. And actually, the reason why I wanted to share this is because I think it's very easy to look at it from a cost-cutting angle, but I think there's a lot more to it. And what I want to do is I want to talk around, let's think about what actually happened. So I asked him to help me on this one. I said, let's dive into what happened. So staff became focused on tasks that require judgment and human input. One of the things that he hadn't factored in is that there is so much context that sits within our staff and within the AP team's head. They know how long we've been working with that supplier. They know what their family are like. They know what their business is. They know what proportion of business that we give them makes up their total supplier base. We understand that supplier more than just a supplier and a vendor relationship. It enabled us to make emotional-based decisions, decisions that were right for the business, decisions that were right for vendor satisfaction and relationship that continue to get us to where we need to get to moving forward. The team also began to spend more time on those strategic activities. When I asked him what those strategic activities were, he said that there's tons of different things they now had time to do that they'd never really thought about before. They were looking at the process, they were optimizing that process. They were able to look at things like negotiation, and they were doing things like payment trend analysis to look at, okay, who can we renegotiate? Where do we renegotiate with different suppliers? All using the Rossum and our analytics system. The other part that they also realized is that their roles and responsibilities began to change internally. Whereas before we had those people that were working on manual data entry, those people now were more focused on actually who are the people that are paying on time? Who are the people that I need to chase? Who are the exceptions that I need to deal with? How do I focus on which exceptions to go after? Well, again, we have more time on our hands to make this a more beneficial use of every single day. And the fourth one, which I think is really important, and he was very surprised about, which was the vendor satisfaction. They were able to dig in and spend more time with their key vendors. They were collaborating with them to reduce things like exception rates, negotiate better payment terms, look at increasing the flow through of different products and value propositions, and look at renegotiating wider contract sets. This was one of the most hidden values that he hadn't quite factored in when going on this journey. But I said to him, I said, hey, look, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to present this to a wide audience of people. Looking back 6 months ago, or actually thinking about who I'm now presenting this to, what are the key considerations that you would make if you were thinking about this again? And he gave me 3, and I want to share them with you here today. Number 1, lack of institutional knowledge. I'm sure so many of you today are nodding your heads right now going, yeah, damn straight, nobody knows what we know, it's all in our heads. It was something that he hadn't factored, right? Reducing that team size led to a real loss of different information and insights that he realized in hindsight he couldn't afford to lose. The next side of this was around the people's resistance to change. For many people, for any CFOs that are on this call today, or for any heads of AP and teams and finance and whatever else it might be, the idea of saying we're going to introduce AP automation, the idea of increasing automation, immediately seems to work for many people and result in fearing of their job. That can actually impact things like adoption. It can impact things like ROI. So enabling people to feel confident about why we're implementing this technology change really brought them along the journey to get a much better output. The other thing that he was pleased about, and he said, actually, I would consider again, is that reducing my team size does not actually really lead to more efficiency. He said that with a smaller team, I then have less people to resolve all of the exceptions, something I definitely would think about again. So hopefully for you today, just giving you some more advice in terms of the other myths that I think about. Myth number 2, in my eyes, busted. It does not always mean that we decrease our team size and we reduce cost. Myth number 3, my favorite one, honestly my favorite one. This is my favorite because the majority of the customers that I speak to today, this is the big thing they come to me for. And I don't blame them, if I'm being honest, right? Most people here today, they focus on straight-through processing. I'm sure if I look back at the Q&A that we did at the beginning, many of us today will be focused on the straight-through processing metric. And why should you not, right? If we were to look at this and we were to think about which company is the most efficient, 60, 70, 80% of people here today would say, well, Zach, of course, most efficient company B, right? That's always the answer. But actually, what happens if we then start to look at it and we look at a different layer of information? What about if we don't look at straight-through processing and we look at a new KPI? What about if we look at docs per hour per annotator? Then people might say to me, well, of course, it's company A. right? We look at straight through processing rate, 55.9%, but actually their docs per hour per annotator is 243 docs. Many of you might be thinking about this, but why? And the reality for me, and this is really where we start to have these conversations, because many people come to Rossum and many people think about AP automation. They always think of, I want 99% straight through processing. I want 75, I want it to be 80, I want it to be 90. But the reality for us as we continue to move into the world of using Rossum and thinking about all of the intricacies, relying on those traditional metrics, things like accuracy, straight through processing, for me personally obscures the true value of a platform like Rossum, intelligent document processing. Focusing on documents processed per hour really provides a much clearer understanding and it takes into account the operational improvements and the efficiency improvements that happen when working with a platform like Rossum. And it really, the metric for me focuses on maximizing productivity per person. And just so people can think about it, right? When I'm going to these people and people come to me and they say, hey, Zach, I just want 99% straight through processing. I say, okay, but let's ask some more questions around it. There are so many different variables to consider than just one KPI. How many fields are we capturing? What level of data matching am I taking into account? What level of information am I doing headers? Am I doing line items? What are my languages? How many of my documents are PO backed? What is my confidence score threshold for something like a Rossum AI that has AI capabilities built in? Then we look at things like, well, actually for the time that I do need to work on exceptions, what am I doing within that exception? How long does an exception take? Does it take 5 seconds? Does it take a minute? Does it take 2 minutes? Does it take 10 minutes? And again, all of these different questions I would recommend us ask ourselves outside of thinking about straight through processing to start to just consider different levels of KPIs. And the reason why I think this KPI in documents per hour, per annotator, is a really good KPI for us to use, and of course there are many that we should use, they shouldn't be used in singularity, is because it gives us a viewpoint to start to think about things. If we take into account straight through processing, plus documents needed for manual validation, plus our manual validation time, what we do is we get to an average time to process a document. And for many of us, when we think about this, we'll go, well, 70%, of course, that's easy, right? But actually, what does that do for us? It looks at 300 documents per hour. If I was to take in 60% straight through processing, but decrease my manual validation time. A huge move forward in terms of what my capability and my team are able to do. Often really overlooked because people just go, I want the highest straight through processing I can. But what's also really interesting for me is when we then start to look at other metrics such as these two. Did anybody notice this? I can have 40% straight through processing. I can have 70% straight through processing, but actually my capability still remains exactly the same. I can focus on doing exactly the same amount of hours, annotate documents per hour per annotator, which means my output is exactly the same across both of these different capability sets. So again, these are the metrics that I believe we need to be thinking about before we go and focus on straight through processing being the gold standard. So, key considerations when measuring the impact of automation. Number one, as I've just said, straight through processing doesn't capture everything, right? It doesn't take into account compliance, it doesn't take into account exceptions, it also doesn't take into account things like supplier satisfaction. Number two, it's those exceptions that drive the cost and complexity. Imagine on those pages earlier, if I had moved the exceptions from how long does it take me to do it 70%, and I moved it from 60 seconds to 120 seconds, I would have then halved how long actually I'm getting at the back of this. Outside of straight through processing, what is the impact of it? What are the metrics that matter to me that will enable me to improve my efficiency? Finally, for me, focusing on that strategic value. Metrics that reflect not just the input of the technology, but also the operational health of your business. How long are my teams taking to resolve exceptions? What is my supplier satisfaction? These are things that should be thought about as we continue to move through the journey of AP automation. Finally, for me, we see this every single day. I mentioned my experience. I mentioned the history that we have here at Rossum. We work with over 350 global enterprise businesses, looking at a variety of different document types. We've got a couple of examples here from a manufacturer, very well known global manufacturer, also a food delivery organization, looking at before, after Rossum, all of these different capabilities. Now, of course, I'm not going to sit here and say, absolutely, everybody needs to get in touch with me. But if you would like to get in touch with me, I would love to have those conversations with you as well. So let's think about this. Think about, in summary, more than just what is on the document. Accuracy is not always king. We should be balancing technology with the people and the process considerations of what that technology impact is going to have to my team. And we should think about the traditional metrics, rethink them, focus on efficiency, focus on strategic goals, focus on all of those different capabilities to give me the output that I'm thinking about today. There is a question here. Sally may help me. I don't know if this question is meant to be here or not, but it might be. I can't really remember. But we can get into things like Q&As, or I'm well over time. You'll tell me.
No, that was absolutely fantastic, Zach. Thank you so much. I'll leave this poll up for those of you that are collecting your CPE points. You take part in a couple of the polls, and we'll take a couple of questions, Zach. But I wanted to let you know that the poll that you asked earlier on how do you measure automation, and we had some great answers: accuracy, project and hours saved, FTE saved, number of manual hours automated, task completion time. So I don't think strategic, which maybe if we answered the poll again now, people would change their answer. But definitely at the beginning, there was lots of very kind of operational, I would say, KPIs. So really, really interesting to look at that. And we had a question come through from Ashwani. I'll take that one first. And the question was, please reflect on some of the key challenges when driving such a digital transformation. So maybe kind of the key the key challenges you've seen and how you would handle them.
The biggest challenge, I think, is making sure that business is completely aligned. That's probably the biggest challenge that we see, right? We'll have an AP team, we'll have a finance team that have said, this is what we're going to do, but they won't then be aligned with the IT team. And they certainly may not be aligned with the board level decisions. The best and most valuable projects that we have here at Rossum are where we see that you have IT, you have the leadership team, and you have the finance team, all aligned in terms of what the output of that project needs to be. If you don't have all three of those, it becomes more of a struggle when you're thinking about a digital transformation journey, because somebody is often holding you back at some given point. So before you get started on any of these journeys, consult IT, consult leadership, consult your team, come together to make sure that you have a unified view of what success looks like.
On mute. I only ran digital conferences for a living, and I forgot to take myself off mute. I was just going to say that that was a great answer, and I've never seen so many people say great presentation in the chat. So I think the audience enjoyed it as much as me. So thank you very, very much. And we also, just to let you know, Zach's colleague Grammy, I presume he's a Harry Potter fan. He also mentioned that the download that you've got there, the report and the top trends is fresh off the press today. So don't forget to download it. You will be the first ones reading it. So sadly, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much to Zach and to everyone that attended. We really appreciate you taking the time to put together your presentation and deliver it today. We will be taking a 10-minute break now, and then we'll go into our last session of today, which is on generative AI. So we'll be looking a little bit with 3M. Edesio Santana, he's a global digital acceleration leader for 3M. He's going to be talking to us about how they're using GenAI there. He's going to be joined by Sean Zulfika. He is the former VP for AI at Morgan Stanley, and they'll join by Leah Khan at Apsen. So we will see you there in 10 minutes. Thank you once again to Zach.
Thank you.